I remember the smell before I remember the pain, alcohol, sweat, and cheap cologne. I remember the silence afterward more than the noise. The night was so still that even the cicadas outside stopped singing, as if the whole trailer park was holding its breath with me. I lay on my bed, not moving, staring at the cracks on the ceiling until the edges blurred. I didn't cry. I couldn't. There was no sound left inside me. It felt like my body was an empty shell that someone else had already lived in and broken. I was 10 years old. That night, something inside me stopped believing in protection, in parents, in home. My mother was in the next room, probably sleeping through the muffled noises or pretending not to hear them. I wanted to call for her, but something told me she already knew, and that was worse than the act itself. The next morning, the sun came in through the thin curtains and touched my face. I felt nothing. I got up, brushed my teeth with a cracked brush, and went to school like nothing had happened. The world kept spinning, the teacher kept talking, and I kept pretending. But from that day on, I wasn't a child anymore. For the next 3 years, the same nightmare returned again and again. I learned how to make myself invisible, how to disappear inside my own body, how to measure every sound, every shadow, every smell that meant danger. My mother became smaller, quieter, always tired, always scared. He yelled at her, pushed her, hit her. And when he couldn't break her enough, he came for me. Some nights, I stayed outside until I saw his truck leave the lot. I'd wait for the headlights to disappear down the dirt road before sneaking back into the trailer to sleep for a few hours before school. Other nights, I'd hide behind the gas station across the street until sunrise. The man who worked there, Clive, noticed me. He was old, quiet, the kind of man who said little and did more. One night, he brought me a sandwich and a bottle of orange soda. I couldn't even say thank you. I just stared at the food until my stomach reminded me what hunger was. After that, he started letting me clean the floors and rest in the back room sometimes. I was still a kid, but I worked like my life depended on it because it did. The last time my stepfather tried to touch me, something inside me snapped. I don't remember screaming. I just remember the sound of metal against bone, the baseball bat hitting his head, and then silence. I stood there, shaking, the bat still in my hands, watching him groan on the floor. And for the first time in years, he looked scared. Not of the police. Not of my mother. Of me. "I'll kill you if you ever touch me again," I heard myself say. My voice was calm, steady, older than it should have been. He never touched me again after that. But he didn't need to. The air inside the trailer turned poisonous. My mother couldn't look at me. She started working longer shifts, pretending exhaustion was blindness. I stopped coming home whenever he was there. I was 12, and I was already living like a ghost. Clive's kindness became my lifeline. He treated me like a person, not a burden. When I turned 14, he handed me the keys to a car that barely ran, a dented blue sedan with peeling paint. "It's not much," he said, "but it's yours." That car became my first home. I parked it behind the gas station, filled it with old blankets and school books, and slept there most nights. I studied under the dim yellow light from the station sign, my notes balanced on the steering wheel. At school, I didn't talk to anyone. I wasn't bullied. I was ignored, which somehow hurt less. But grades became my escape. Chemistry, math, biology, things that made sense, that had rules, that didn't depend on anyone's moods or fists. Every time I got an A, I felt a tiny spark of control returning. Every time I solved an equation, I felt like I was building a bridge out of the mud. Looking back, I know my mother knew everything. The way she avoided my eyes, the way her hands trembled when I entered the room, the way she sighed in relief when I left, she knew. But she was broken too. A child who had grown up without love, now raising one the same way. And I can't bring myself to hate her. I wanted to for years. But hate keeps you tied to the past, and I wanted to be free. That was the last year I called that trailer home. By 15, I had already left it behind for good, carrying nothing but a backpack, a scholarship essay, and a dream I didn't yet believe in. I didn't know it then, but that night, the night I hit him with the bat, was the first night I chose myself. The first night I decided I would survive, even if no one ever came to save me. At 14, my world fit inside one backpack and an old blue sedan that coughed every time it started. The seat foam was torn, the heater barely worked, and the windshield leaked when it rained. But it was mine. After years of surviving on someone else's terms, ownership felt like freedom. I kept a stack of school books on the passenger seat, a blanket in the trunk, and a photo of my mother from before everything broke. In that photo, she was only 16, holding me as a baby, smiling like the future hadn't yet closed its doors on her. I used to look at it when nights got too cold to sleep. Days were for survival. I'd wake before sunrise, wipe condensation from the car windows, and walk to the gas station. Clive always left me a cup of coffee, half sugar, half milk, and a quiet nod that meant you're doing fine. Then I went to school, smelling faintly of gasoline and soap, pretending I came from somewhere normal. No one ever asked where I lived. Teachers loved my grades, students ignored me, and that was enough. The less people knew, the safer I was. At night, I cleaned the station floors, then studied under the flickering neon light above pump number 2. Chemistry became my language of control. Precise, predictable, no surprises. If I could balance equations, maybe I could balance my own life someday. One winter evening, the engine died completely. I sat there, breath fogging the glass, staring at the frozen road. For a moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe I'd freeze like the rest of my past. But Clive appeared, wearing his old brown jacket. He didn't say much, just handed me his keys. There's a cot in the back room. Use it. That night was the first real sleep I'd had in years. He never asked for my story, and I never offered it. He just gave me a place to exist, quietly, safely. Sometimes kindness doesn't arrive with big gestures. It arrives as silence that doesn't hurt. The scholarship dream started as a rumor in homeroom. They're giving a full ride if you write something good. I wrote my essay in the car, using the steering wheel as a desk. I didn't write about trauma. I wrote about resilience, about chemical reactions, and how pressure can transform elements into something stronger. I guess they saw through the metaphor. When the acceptance letter came, I sat on the hood of the car and cried, not from joy, but from disbelief. For once, the universe had said yes. Leaving the trailer park felt unreal. I didn't tell my mother I was going. I just slipped a note under the cracked door. I'm leaving. Don't worry. I hoped she'd take it as relief, not abandonment. The first day of college, I walked through the campus gates wearing secondhand jeans and a thrift store backpack. Everyone around me seemed rich, polished, untouched by the kind of hunger I knew. I felt invisible again, but in a different way. This time, it didn't hurt. I worked nights in the hospital cafeteria, studied until dawn, and slept in borrowed hours. Exhaustion became a badge of honor. Every ache meant I was still moving forward. When other students went home for holidays, I stayed in the dorms and volunteered in the ER. The smell of antiseptic, the steady hum of monitors, those became my lullabies. I learned that healing wasn't just about medicine. Sometimes it was about presence, about being the voice that says you're safe now. There were moments I almost quit. When bills piled up, when professors doubted me, when memories clawed their way back at 3 a.m. But then I'd remember that 10-year-old girl staring at the ceiling, praying for a future. I owed her everything. Clive died the year I finished medical school. I couldn't afford to attend the funeral, but I sat outside the hospital that night and whispered thank you to the stars. He'd never know, but every life I helped save would carry a piece of his kindness. Now, during residency, I live mostly in Scrubs. My apartment is just a storage room with a bed and a coffee maker, but it's mine. The walls are thin, the rent's too high, and the hours never end. But when I put on my white coat, I feel the weight of everything I survived turning into purpose. Sometimes, during quiet shifts, I close my eyes and see that little girl again, the one in the cracked trailer, silent and small. I imagine kneeling beside her, brushing the hair from her face, and saying, "You made it. You did this. You saved yourself." The first time I saw my name on a hospital badge, I cried in the supply closet. Not loud, not messy, just silent tears that came from somewhere deep, the kind that carry years of buried weight. Resident physician. 2 words that meant I'd survived. But survival isn't a switch you flip. It's a quiet, ongoing negotiation with the past. I still woke up some nights sweating, heart pounding, the smell of that trailer in my throat. Some part of me never really left that room. Trauma isn't a story you finish. It's a language you learn to translate so you can live among others. Residency was brutal. 70-hour weeks, 2 hours of sleep on a good night, endless rotations. I thought I'd be numb to suffering after everything, but every child who flinched, every bruised woman in the ER, hit a nerve I couldn't hide. I had to learn the art of balance, how to care without collapsing. There was one girl I'll never forget. 9 years old. Quiet. Thin. She'd been brought in after a fall. Her mother hovered near the door, eyes darting, voice trembling. I knew that look. I'd seen it in my own mirror. When I examined the girl, she didn't meet my eyes. I crouched down, spoke softly, and said, "You're safe here." She blinked once, like she didn't believe me. But when I came back later with a cup of juice, she was still there waiting. That small act reminded me why I'd chosen this path, not to erase my pain, but to repurpose it. In the hospital, I learned that people are made of more than flesh and bone. They're made of stories, some too heavy to tell, others stitched into silence. And sometimes healing isn't about curing. It's about standing in someone's darkness and refusing to leave. The hardest patients weren't the dying ones. They were the ones who didn't believe they deserved to live. I recognized that in them because once I was one of them. One night, after a 14-hour shift, I walked home through the city rain. My scrubs were soaked, my shoes heavy, but I couldn't stop smiling. For the first time, I realized I didn't owe my happiness to anyone else's permission. I passed by a trailer park on the outskirts of town. Different one, same smell of rust and rain. For a moment, I stood there, watching the dim lights inside, the silhouettes of lives trapped in cycles I'd escaped. I didn't feel pity. I felt grief and gratitude, because I'd made it out. But I also knew thousands of girls hadn't. That night, I wrote a letter to my mother. Not one I planned to send, just words that needed to exist outside my chest. You failed me, but I understand now. You were a child raising a child, both of us drowning in silence. I can't hate you anymore. I've carried that weight long enough. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I do. Writing those words felt like cutting the final thread that tied me to that old pain. The anger had kept me alive once, but now it was just keeping me tired. Over time, I began speaking to other young women from rough backgrounds, volunteering at shelters, mentoring girls who wanted to study medicine. When they asked me why I chose this career, I told them the truth. Because one night, when I was 10, no one came, and I swore that one day, I'd be the person who does. Even now, success doesn't feel glamorous. I still live in that small rented room, walls covered in sticky notes and schedules. I still eat cheap instant noodles between shifts. But I've built a life that's mine, earned, not given. Sometimes, when I look in the mirror before dawn, I catch a glimpse of my younger self. Her eyes are still cautious, still searching for safety. I smile at her and whisper, "You can rest now. I'll take it from here." It happened one morning, long after I thought I was past it all. I was sitting on the hospital steps after night shift, watching the city wake up. The street vendors were opening their stalls, buses sighing at the stoplights, sunlight turning the hospital windows gold. For a moment, I let myself breathe. That's when I felt it, a strange, quiet warmth inside. Not joy exactly, not relief. Just peace. Something I'd never really known before. I realized I wasn't running anymore. Life hadn't magically become easy. The student loans were still there. The exhaustion still followed me home like a shadow. The world still broke people in ways no medicine could fix. But now I could see the distance between who I was and who I'd become. There was power in that distance. When I looked back, I didn't see a victim anymore. I saw a girl who clawed her way out of the dark with nothing but willpower and a heartbeat that refused to quit. I saw a woman who built herself from ashes, brick by brick, night by night. And I wanted to thank her. That night, I went home, turned off my phone, and stood in front of the mirror. I looked at myself, really looked. The tired eyes, the small scar on my lip, the lines forming from years of focus and worry. I didn't look like a survivor. I looked like someone who lived. I wrapped my arms around myself and whispered, "You did it. You made it. You don't need to be afraid anymore." It sounds simple, almost childish, but that hug was everything I'd been waiting for since I was 10. The hug no one gave me. The one that said, "You're safe now." Sometimes I still dream of the trailer park. I still see my mother sitting on the steps, smoking in silence, the air heavy with things we never said. In those dreams, I walk up to her, take her hand, and tell her I forgive her. She looks surprised, maybe because she never forgave herself. And when I wake up, I don't feel anger anymore. Just a soft ache, like an old scar that flares when it rains. It's a reminder, not a wound. I've learned that survival isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of becoming. Pain doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes empathy, strength, boundaries, and sometimes purpose. I used to think healing meant forgetting. Now I know it means remembering without breaking. Today, I still work long shifts, still chase sleep between emergencies, still carry my younger self with me everywhere I go. But she's lighter now. She's not hiding anymore. She walks beside me in every corridor, in every patient's room, in every heartbeat I help steady. And when I hold a child's hand through fear, or tell a woman she's safe, I know I'm holding her, too, that small, trembling girl who once thought the world was nothing but darkness. She survived. She became me, and I became her protector. I don't live in fear anymore. I live in proof. Proof that even when the world takes everything from you, you can still rebuild, slowly, painfully, beautifully. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the world is asleep, I whisper to the girl I was, "You made it home.